Okay, we are now joined by another Essex legend, probably one of the Essex legends when you go down the years, certainly in the top 10 of all-time greats to have pulled on the Essex shirt. He won't agree with that at all, but that's my view. Welcome to 98 Out, Mr. Ryan Tendo. Ryan, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Always nice to chat to you, nice to be on the show.
Yeah, you're looking good. Now you're out in Dubai. What are you doing out in those parts of the world?
So just quarantining for the T20 World Cup, which starts in a couple of weeks. We've got that little pre-qualifier thing, which starts on the 18th. So it's 6 days of quarantine and then into a little prep phase where we're going to be doing some training and play a few matches to hopefully get ready for those three big matches coming up.
How are you handling quarantine? Is it as tedious as everyone says?
It's tedious, and it's actually quite a good point because with all the English stuff coming up, I felt very little sympathy for the players, saying that they didn't want to go overseas and that the quarantining and that was too hard. But this certainly has opened up my eyes. When I say hard quarantine, they bring you your food 3 times a day, knock on your door. So I haven't seen a person except for the people that came and tested me today. And it's not as easy as it sounds. And I don't want to be pity parade and oh sorry for me, but it certainly has been eye-opening the first 3 days just to see how boring and how important it is to have contact with people.
Are you racking up some good Netflix hours?
Yeah, Netflix, podcasts, a little bit of reading, trying to do workouts in our room, but the motivation's pretty low, and a lot of sleeping. So all in all, pretty lazy existence at the moment.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's kind of like how you approach these things. How much longer have you got to do?
I'm out on Sunday, so what's that? Another 4 days. Okay,
good. So Netherlands T20. Well, it's you got a chance.
Certainly to qualify. Yeah, there's 3 games where you need to win 2, so I'd say a fair to good chance. Obviously respecting our position, Namibia have strengthened a lot, and Ireland are always a challenge, and Sri Lanka will be a nice opportunity to make an upset, but you'd expect them to go through from the group. So certainly have to target those other 2 games and make sure we can get into the World Cup proper, where we can have a lot of fun and try and make a few upsets as well.
Yeah, you don't mind a World Cup upset, do you, personally?
I've only been involved in one. I think the guys that have come after me have done a few more. They've obviously beat England again, and they're chased against Ireland to qualify. But yeah, the Dutch guys are certainly up for it now. I think it's probably across the board with associates now. I think the days of rocking up and having an easy game guaranteed are gone. The associates are up for it, and they'll be looking to scalp a few along the way.
Yeah, even Nepal we saw recently when they had a domestic competition there. Were you part of that? Did the Netherlands go out for that one?
No, I've been to Nepal for the Everest Premier League, and I know there's a hotbed of talent there. Geez, they've got some super talented guys, and the love for the game is right up there with India and Bangladesh and Pakistan. But obviously, they rely a lot on Sandeep. And as you know, certainly in T20 cricket, a wrist spinner can turn the game on its head in no time. Now,
your career has kind of spanned the growth of T20 cricket. So you were there at the launch of it when it was the T20 Cup with Essex, and you were there at the other end when Napes was going crazy that night against Sussex. What was that like up close?
Yeah, I only came in right at the end. I don't remember why he was promoted, and I don't remember who he batted with, but he certainly smoked it around. And, at that stage, it was incredible. I don't want to show my age, but certainly 12, 13 years ago, guys didn't used to just bang it out the park for fun. Everyone coming through the system now plays a scoop and a reverse scoop, and, they can take on length. But certainly back then, there was a more progressive way to building an innings. So to see someone come in and whack the amount of sixes, I think he had 16 sixes, and obviously get 150, which was the highest domestic score at the time, was a real treat to watch. And probably for once in too few times, he just showed what a talent he was.
Another snippet that maybe listeners and viewers might not realize is that you have actually won the IPL with KKR. The IPL was the thing that really gave 2020 cricket or T20 cricket the springboard. What was it you thought that the Indians seized on that everyone else had missed up to that point?
I think just the theatre of it. And for me, a big part of it was actually the production. So, you play at Eden Gardens or you play in Mumbai. The atmosphere is just incredible. You can match it maybe at the Oval in my experience of playing T20 in the UK, but the way it was packaged up and presented on TV, gave it a aura that I haven't seen replicated anywhere else. And I think that was the key. The amalgamation of the cricket stars and celebrity was a very clever marketing tool. Getting well-known faces to head up the franchises, and then obviously just all the paraphernalia, the clothing, the fireworks. I think cricket needed that boost of injection at that time, and I think India does it better than anyone else.
That's kind of like what they tried to do with the 100. I think that they took that kind of approach with very heavy on the marketing and the presentation of the game.
Yeah, and two of the key ingredients are good weather and good cricket. The stadiums and the cricket you produce are obviously a big part of the product. And India obviously lends itself to that without fail during the IPL. You get the odd rain off game, whereas the UK is slightly different. So you do have that hurdle to overcome. But I think you're dead right. They're trying to fashion the 100 on something new and exciting, and that will be captive to a newer, younger audience.
Yeah, I went to a couple of the games, and my son went to quite a few in the end. And it did seem to catch the imagination of the youngsters. I know a lot of the purists spit the word 100 out of their mouths, but I think they were going after a new audience. And I think they found it and definitely hit the nail with the younger guys and the families and the rest of it. They all seem to turn up and enjoy themselves.
That's great. I think any change, you always meet resistance or opposition to start with. People say you're crazy to start with. But for me, if it's better for cricket in the long run, if it's going to get more people involved, if it's going to change the audience and the demographic of people watching, it can only be a good thing. And I unfortunately didn't watch much of it, but certainly all the guys who I've spoken to who were involved said it had a different feel to it. It really felt like something exciting, and hopefully it can just go from strength to strength. And hopefully also we have the purist side of it. I think there's a lot to be said for championship cricket. Yes, we don't get the numbers and the coverage, but certainly has a massive part still to play in the English game.
Right, so let's talk about the English game, and let's talk about Essex. So your career with Essex has spanned a real array of success, and also the players that you've shared the dressing room with, from when you came into the side to the side you're leaving. You get on a high with this last 5 years, especially. It's almost like winning has just become a mentality with Essex, that there's this kind of I think that's the key to winning is just this belief and this desire. And what we saw at Edgbaston on that wonderful T20 night, and some of the games that we chased down in the county championships, the success that's gone from winning Div 2 and non-stop trophies ever since, it has been quite a joy to see. And to see new guys come onto the scene and established guys step away, there doesn't seem to be any break in the belief and the commitment.
I think you're right, and I think that's testament to the culture that's being created. Starting with Silvers and obviously Anthony McGrath. They've got the guys really enjoying the cricket, and I know it's very easy to say that the quality of personnel is exceptional. I can't speak highly enough about guys like Sam Cook, Jamie Porter, Dan Lawrence, Nick Brown. So, I'm not even mentioning the superstars. I'm not mentioning Alistair Cook and Simon Harmer and Tom Wesley. Just the belief and the passion. And, one thing that I feel that resurrected was the pride of playing for Essex again, which I think is really important. And that comes from a strong group and a strong culture. And, personally, I believe the cricket skills are exceptional. I think Essex have got one of the best sets of squads of players in the country, but also that sort of purpose and then the enjoyment factor that goes with it means, like you said, it's perpetuated beyond certain players leaving the team, and hopefully that culture will just stay together and guys will keep producing performances. Obviously not going to win all the time, but I think that it means a lot and that you enjoy it. If you can keep that going, you're going to have a lot more success along the way.
For me personally, it just reminded me of when I was a kid going down to Chelmsford and seeing the likes of Brian Hardy, Graham Gooch, John Lever, and then that sort of transformed into NASA and those players, that era, Ronnie Irani and that series, that series of success in the 90s. But to me, the culture didn't see, okay, we weren't quite as successful, but you still had great players, you know, like Dave Masters, for example. I'll chuck that name in there. Um, there was always quality at Essex, just, you know, maybe things didn't go our way. And I know that in cricket, more than any other sport, luck and the weather can just be the fine margins between you winning things and maybe coming second.
I'd agree with that, but I'd also say that to consistently produce a high level of performance obviously gives you a far better chance. And yes, you're not always going to win. And arguably, we played better cricket in 2018 than we did in 2019, where we won the championship in the end. But certainly, what I've seen, I think across the board, more consistency of strength. So I fewer weaknesses, but also the consistency in the level of performance. I put down to those things I mentioned earlier is, you know, quality people who really take pride in their own performance, but also understand there's a bigger purpose of, you know, you're playing for a county and also you're playing for the other 20 guys in the squad, and you turn up and make sure you give your best every week in, week out in the championship. And I think along with the luck and you know, taking the variables into account, if that's all your blueprint and you're a quality outfit, you got a far better chance of succeeding over a longer period of time, like a season.
Have you got any? I don't want to use the word favourites, but let's say when you shared the dressing room, and actually not just at Essex, maybe at KKR or the other teams you played with, who are the ones that have impressed you the most in terms of attitude or performance, or just the way they carry themselves, I suppose?
That's a tough question. I mean, even when I said my goodbyes the other day, sort of by mentioning some and eliminating others, you feel quite bad. And again, hand on heart, at Essex, I could tell a personal and a cricket story about every single guy in there, where I think they've got strengths and weaknesses. And again, the quality across the board is probably more important than mentioning certain individuals who,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
who are exceptional at some things. Favorites, you know, probably bizarrely, I can mention someone like Aaron Beard, who hasn't featured this year. But, you know, that work ethic and that understanding of team and where you fit in, and even when it's not your turn to shine, how you behave, how you perform, how you rock up. You know, not necessarily a favorite, but certainly something that sort of warms my heart to think that this is a culture we've created. And I think it's so important, and the sort of unsung heroes are those guys who rock up and care about the team literally every day they come into the ground.
Hang on, I've just got Ravi Bapar on the phone. Hang on. Yeah, no, it wasn't you, Rav. No, not even a mention. No. Sorry.
You're talking away from cricket. That's an easy one. No, but so I guess to drill into it a little bit more, you know, guys who just purely by coincidence I sort of spent the majority of my cricket time with, as in literally doing my craft, would be Ravi and Foz, and purely because I batted 6 and for the majority of the time Rav batted 5 and Fozzy batted 7. So certainly in terms of working relationship and understanding people, which is also key to being successful when you are batting. You know, Rav's right up there, and like many people away from cricket, you know, exceptionally loyal friend and just an all-round good guy. But there's been a lot of good people, and I know it's easy to say when times have been good, but I really feel like I've crossed paths with a lot of good people in the last sort of decade or so.
Yeah, and it's an amazing conveyor belt down the years that have come through. When you sort of think back, I mean, the current crop, I mean, the fact that you got Sir Alistair Cook sat there in the dressing room with you, but then you go back through, you know, the Ravs, I mean, you go back to Graham Gooch, but, you know, Nasser Hussain. Essex seems to always produce top class, top caliber cricketers and people that kind of set examples to kids on and off the pitch. And it definitely seems that there is, as you say, there's a culture there which seems to be ongoing. It's ingrained. And when people join the club and get selected, they seem to buy into that quite easily, I think.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult to put your finger on why that is. I mean, culture is essentially the manifestation of how you behave every single day. So if you're gonna concede on something or be lax on something, it's going to come back to bite you. So the players know that, but I think a big part of the culture or the things you're trying to identify is people like Graham Gooch and Keith Fletcher, you know, the stalwarts who are still around. It was so nice to have Hoddy Tim Phillips, Mark Bettini, who else was there the other day? Jake was there, Jason Gallion was there, and there's not enough interaction between past players, and there's a lot of there's a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge that we can tap into. But certainly at the moment, I feel we're relying too heavily on Gray and Fletch, who, rightly have their place at the top of the pile, and they're awesome for the club. But I think certainly one thing I want to try help with now that I've stepped away from the team is, tapping into all those resources. There's been so many good guys passed to the club in the last 20 years, let alone the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And I think that old boy union is something we can strengthen and use to our advantage.
What's your thoughts on the state of the game as a whole? A lot is made about, and as we come out of COVID hasn't helped, obviously, but in terms of interest, participation, what stage do you think the game is at, and what do you see for the future?
It's quite hard to gauge. I'll put my hand up and say, you get self-obsessed, and for me, county cricket is everything. So I'm not even looking at the international side of things. But broadly speaking, I'd say be very careful of playing too much cricket. Sort of limiting the quantity and putting more emphasis on the quality, I think is quite important. And that goes all the way from county cricket to the amount of T20 leagues, the amount of international cricket. It's quite easy to get caught up or lost between two series now. You don't know when it starts or when it finishes.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a commercial aspect to it, and sort of chicken and egg thing. You need to drive the commercial side to increase participation and to push new levels. But I think there's a sweet spot, and for me, they can draw back on the amount of cricket and the amount that's been expected of players. Go back to the ISO thing. My initial thing is like, these England players, they're getting paid a fortune, and what are they moaning about 14 days in ISO? But like you mentioned earlier before we started speaking, the holistic approach to cricket is far more important, and there's some traction there in getting the balance right between how much we put out there and how much is actually meaningful and quality.
I think another good sign of the future is the huge uptake in participation in things like All Stars and Dynamos, and girls cricket as well, which has just exploded the last few years. Would mean that there's a more inclusive aspect of the game going forward, I think.
Yeah, again, I wish I was more aware of what's happening on the ground, but obviously playing a lot of cricket, I can only speak for the professional side of the women's game, and it's absolutely fantastic. It feels like they're finally being taken seriously, and there's 50% of the population who now have a chance to get involved and participate. And the standard of women's cricket has improved dramatically in the last 4 years, just from what I've witnessed. And if you follow that curve up, hopefully it's a good sign for participation, man.
Yeah, and Essex have got Maddie Villiers as a superstar in the ladies' game and the women's game. So yeah, and just tell me, Chelmsford has always been a really great place to play cricket, particularly on those famous T20 nights when the place is just rocking. Have you got, just before we leave, have you got a few words just to say to all the Essex followers and fans that will be watching and listening to this?
Yeah, I said quite a lot in this last week. I think it's very difficult to sum up in a sentence or a few sentences what it means playing there for 19 years. And I also think it took COVID to actually realize just how fortunate we are at Essex. Even with the slowly having the fans back, it's made a big difference, compared to last year and the start of this year. But not only the T20 that you mentioned, Darren, the championship cricket where we get maybe 1,000 people or 1,500 people, it really makes a massive difference. And even just sitting there last week and watching that last game, there were maybe a couple of thousand people in. Essex has been a real great place to play cricket. We appreciate the support. We always have appreciated the sport. And for me to spend 18 years applying my craft there is a professional treasure that I'm so grateful to have had.
I think that's an important point to make. I think one of the things that Essex players do really, really well is the engagement and the appreciation of the fans. Always, whenever I'm there, that there's always players quite happy to have a word with the supporters afterwards and mix in the pavilion, etc., etc. So. Listen, Ryan, on behalf of myself and on behalf of all of Essex fans and followers, and in fact cricket fans, I'd like to just thank you for all the entertainment and all the cricket and just enjoyment that you've supplied down all these years, and also just as in your leadership, the example you set as captain as well, absolutely fantastic. So many thanks for joining us, and we wish you absolutely all the best for the future, and I hope you lift the World Cup this year.
Any pleasure. Thanks for the kind words. Always nice to chat, Darren.